We're back with another episode, Blending Voices, Creating Legacy. We have an amazing guest today. I have a little story to share, like I do always, but I remember in October of 2024, I attended my first Senior Living Innovation Forum, and there was this amazing chief clinical officer there speaking, was one of the keynotes. That happened to be none other than Brian Geyser. I was blown away by his forward thinking. He has always been somebody that both Adam and I have looked up to. Earlier this year in July, when we came to Lumina Las Vegas, where we're filming this podcast live today, Adam and I found out that Brian had joined Inspiren. And ever since, we've just traded ideas, shared AI and tech integration stories. And when we had the opportunity to be here in Vegas today, I thought, hey, Brian and I are going to be together. And he is the type of individual that every one of our listeners, every one of our team members wants to hear from. Brian truly is that individual in every industry who manages to bridge worlds that rarely meet, the clinical and the creative, the data-driven and the deeply human. Brian is one of those people from his early days as psychiatric nurse at Yale to his leadership roles at Maplewood Senior Living, and now as head of clinical innovation at Inspiren. Brian's story is about curiosity, courage, and a relentless pursuit to make care smarter and more human. This conversation isn't about systems or sensors. It's about stories. It's about how empathy scales, how humor keeps us grounded, and how innovation at its best starts with the heart. So I introduce you all to none other than Brian Geyser.
Thank you, Phil. And thank you for having me. I'm totally honored to be here. I have to tell you, I did listen to your podcast with Adam on my plane ride here last night.
Yeah.
And I was very impressed. I mean, you guys are doing something really unique here for the industry, and I appreciate that. I think it's well done. I like the deep dive. I like getting to know the people behind the business, if you will. And I think kudos to you for doing this. It's really great.
Absolutely. Well, we're really excited to have you here today. So diving right in, who was Brian before all the titles, and what shaped your sense of empathy and drive?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't think you know this about me, but when I went to graduate school to study psychiatry, I chose a path to study children and adolescents, actually. So I was very driven to try to figure out the human condition. I was really interested in learning why people hurt and how to heal and why people suffer. And I was always driven to sort of the vulnerable populations. And I see children and adolescents as very vulnerable. These are little people who need adults around them to help guide them. They need our protection, and they need us to work hard on their behalf to help them through life, because life is hard. Now, conversely, I end up in geriatrics, right? So I don't think that's by mistake. I think the way I see that is that children and older adults at the oldest of the old, let's say, are on the same, they're two different points on the same arc of vulnerability, say. Children need their parents around, and older adults at certain age brackets need their adult children around. If they have them, and if not, they need other people. They need family and friends to help them. And so, the commonality there is the most vulnerable amongst us, the young children and adolescents and older adults. I was really, really driven and really wanted to understand how we can impact those populations. I think going back to even before that, my early childhood, like all of us, we all have a story, and we all have things that happened in our childhood that formed us and shaped us. And another thing I've never talked about in public, but my mother was 18 when she got pregnant with me. She was 19 when she had me. And I went through myself, my siblings went through quite a thing, quite a challenge, because of that. Um, it helped shape who I am today, and I am thankful for all of it. But it was rough going there for a little while. A lot of unpredictability in my life, a lot of you know changes and movements and new relationships coming in and out of my life from my mom's relationships that she had. And I think, those struggles in my younger days, led me to this place where I wanted to figure out, the human condition a little bit. I wanted to understand emotions and feelings and why people repeat the same patterns and things like that. So I think that drove me into studying psychiatry. Um, and in hindsight, when I think about it, it's probably because I wanted to figure out myself. I wanted to figure out my family and figure out like what was that all about. So yeah, so that brought me to this place to really understand. It's funny because in psychiatry we talk about the human brain a lot these days, but really psychiatry, nurse practitioners like myself and psychiatrists are we're more cardiologists than we are neurosurgeons. We want to understand the human heart, right? We want to understand people's feelings and emotions and all of that. So that's what I got into in my early days. And I have swung from pediatrics to geriatrics and everything in between over the course of my career. There's a lot of similarities and a lot of commonalities with both populations.
I love that. Somehow on this podcast, we get people to tell things to the listeners and the individuals that they never have be heard. We heard about Adam's Nana. We heard about
Yep.
your mom and being 18 years old, and I can
Yeah.
imagine how that shaped you, and even understanding in yourself the support of mental health for an adolescent. So
Yeah.
find so many strong connections to that response. So I appreciate that.
Mm.
You talked about, starting out as a psych nurse. The world today in psychiatric is about deep listening. How
Mhm.
has that shaped the way you lead today?
Yeah, I think that listening is probably one of the most, if not the most important skill that leaders can have, right? Uh, Sometimes we just need to shut our mouths and listen to the people around us. I think that more often than not, I think if you talk to my colleagues, they'll tell you that, Brian's the guy who sits in the meetings and doesn't say that much, but when he says something, he's thought about it and he's absorbed a lot in the room, and then he'll say what he needs to say. But I generally like to just take it all in. I like to understand what's going on. I like context. I like to understand the context of the situation. Um, so I think for me, being a leader is about deep understanding of the humans in the room, and getting to know their why, getting to understand why they operate the way they do, understand the person behind the title.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a critical thing that we should all understand how to do better.
Appreciate that so much. So while interacting with, residents, patients in your psychiatric days, is there any one story that still sticks out today, even when things get really tough?
Well, yeah, there's so many. You can imagine over the course of my career,
Yeah.
I've treated, hundreds, maybe thousands of young kids, adolescents, and adults, and there's so many stories. One of them, there's a gentleman that we used to care for. He was probably in his 30s or so, and he was a paranoid schizophrenic, a very, very sick individual. His mental illness was very deep, and it was not anything that he did. This is, we know this today. Schizophrenia is a biological, neurobiological disease, and he struggled. He was super paranoid, and we had to learn how to develop a relationship with him. He spent most of his time in his apartment, in his home, and we would visit him 2 to 3 times a day. We would make sure he took his medicine. We would check in with him. We had to learn how to communicate with him in a way that he felt safe. Um, and that is not an easy thing to do. Um, and so, we established a rapport with him, and over the course of many, many years, we kept him safe. We kept him out of the hospital. We kept his different chronic conditions he was managing in check. And that was something really, it was formative for me. I learned so much from this man. And, one of the things I know, one of the questions you'll ask me is what was one of the things that scared me in my career?
Yeah.
Um, he- you know, I was trained as a nurse practitioner, but back in the 90s when I went to school, we were not trained how to be psychopharmacologists. We were trained to do psychotherapy. I mean, at Yale, like Anna Freud taught there. You know what I mean? Like she was part of the Yale Child Study Center, and we learned to be psychotherapists. That's what we were trained to do. At the same time, I was given a DEA number and I was given a prescription pad and sent out into the world. And this gentleman that I just mentioned before, um, he went through a period where his psychiatrist was unavailable. There was nobody to treat him for a period of time, several months, and he needed his medication. Absolutely. If he came off of his medication, it would not be good for him. He would end up in the hospital, no question. And at the time, this was my first business was a psychiatric home care business. We were providing supportive nursing care assessments. We would liaison back to the psychiatry team at the mental health outpatient center and let the doctors and clinicians there know how their patients were doing in the community. So I wasn't writing prescriptions at the time. In fact, I had never written one, and I was never trained to write one. That's just not what we were trained to do at that time in our schooling. But this guy needed his medicine, and I had a prescription pad. So one of my very frightening moments was making the decision that I was going to have to be the person to write his prescriptions for him. And I remember realizing at that moment that I didn't even actually know how to write one, right? We were not trained to do it, and we didn't have ChatGPT at the time.
Yeah, sorry.
So I had to figure it out on my own, and I wrote my first prescription. And I actually walked into Walgreens and gave it to the pharmacist. And I was terrified that he would figure out that I didn't know what I was doing. And and the next thing, like DEA agents would show up at the Walgreens and I'd be in cuffs, like getting arrested. But that didn't happen. We got his medicine, we got him on the medicine, and we were able to take care of it. And I filled the gap there for a few months. And that was both terrifying, but very rewarding at the same time. Having that, like the power of the prescription pad in your hand, but not really knowing how to use it. So that was my first time, prescribing medication, and, many times after that. But that was a pretty scary moment for me, actually.
Yeah, it's incredible how, especially in our industry, right, there can be things that are very scary yet provide so much success when succeeded.
Mm-hmm.
I look at the tech integration that we are journeying together today, and
Yep.
as anxious as we are around that, the reward and what we've seen as reward today is pretty remarkable. So I think you've got to take risks at all times to really dive in and gain that self-fulfilling reward at the end. So
Yeah. Interesting. And like the career shifts that I've made in my over the course of my career have not been that frightening. For one reason or another, they sort of came at a time when it was right for me to do that. But there were certain other things like that that were more scary for me. Writing my graduate thesis was scary for me. Luckily, I had some really amazing mentors and folks that I could lean on to help me through that. But that kind of stuff was frightening. Career shifts were never really frightening for me.
I mean, I look at it now, although not scary or frightening at the time, but if GPT were alive when I was in school, I, I think I would be
You would have cheated on your test?
yeah, I would have been a less educated individual, but feel like I would have been smarter as it. So you walked us through supporting adolescents. Amazing story about this younger gentleman. Looking back on yourself, what's some advice that you would give your younger self today?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I was listening to Neil deGrasse Tyson recently. He was asked the same question, and his answer resonated with me because what he said was, I wouldn't tell him anything. And I thought, what do you mean by that? Like, what kind of advice is that? And, his response was, look, if I went back in time, this is classic Neil deGrasse Tyson. If I went back in time and was standing in front of my younger self and I told him what I know now, and that changed the trajectory of that younger person's life, I wouldn't be me if I somehow, changed him from what he is and the experiences he would have. So that's an interesting take on it, because all the mistakes that I've made and all the good things that I've done and the achievements that I've had in my life were built on the previous things, right? And whether it was, tough times when I was a kid, or different challenges here and there, different things, different failures I've had in my life, it all like created the person I am today, and there's no going back on it, right? There's no regrets.
Yeah.
Like Frank Sinatra, I have a few regrets maybe, but it is what it is. And here we are today, and hopefully you're a better person for all of it. But if I did have to say something, I probably would say, chill out, dude. Like, don't be so serious about everything. Don't take yourself so seriously. Laugh a little bit more, and you're not all that, and you're not all that important in the grand scheme of things. I think one of the things that I had to do, as a survival mechanism for myself, growing up through some of the chaos that I went through, I had to kind of figure out what my narrative was going to be. I had to figure out how I was going to protect myself. And part of that was building an identity for myself. And the problem with doing that is it's just an identity that you've built for yourself, and it could come crumbling down at any moment, right? So while it, in some ways it worked to protect me through and kind of get me through some of these hard times, and it made me a person willing to take risks, you're always vulnerable to that stuff coming crumbling down. So I would just say to him, it's going to be okay. And Scott Galloway, another guy that I listen to, but you're a big podcaster.
I got to jot down some of these names because
I love Scott Galloway.
I want to be the Scott Galloways of the future.
Yeah. So. What he says is, nothing is ever as good or as bad as it seems. Right. And that's an amazing perspective, because I think it's just so true. We get so caught up in the moment thinking, oh my God, it's the worst thing that's ever happened, or this is the greatest thing that's ever happened. But neither are true. And you just got to keep pushing through.
It's all perspective, right? Well, you teed me up for my next question when you told yourself to chill out, laugh a little bit.
Yeah.
You've got a massively successful professional side. But what makes you laugh about yourself? Give me a moment where the innovative guy got it hilariously wrong.
So that one of the things that I do these days is I laugh at myself all the time.
Yeah.
And I didn't do that so much when I was younger, because the identity I had to kind of hold up. But now I laugh at that. Even I laugh at the fact that I had to like hold up this, you sort of become an actor. We all have this like imposter syndrome. So I had a lot of imposter syndrome when I was growing up, and I laugh about that. I just, I'm a silly person. I like to laugh. I like to joke around, and I have no problem being the brunt of somebody's joke. Like, bring it on. Like, make fun of me as much as you can, as much as you need to, because I deserve it. So yeah, I like to laugh. I like to laugh at myself, and I have no issue with it.
You know what? It's funny because I do think that I'm the brunt of a lot of our team members at Solera's jokes. I bear the cost of their humility, and I appreciate that fact. So, love that about you. Switching gears a little bit, right? We're shifting now to more of that midstream professional. Mm-hmm. When did you realize you were more than just a clinician? You were becoming an innovator.
Yeah. So I think when I was in graduate school, we had to come up with like a thesis project, right? It was the biggest deal. You don't graduate without it. And we all had thesis advisors, and you had to go in and kind of tell your advisor what it is you're going to do for your thesis. And So I went in, sat down. She's like, Brian, so what do what's up? What's on your mind? What do you think you're going to pull off here? and, and I said to her, well, I'm going to change the face of child psychiatry. That's what I'm doing. And I'm going to transform the way we care for kids and adolescents in this country. Dead silence, just like right now. And she looked at me
I
and
was waiting for the shoe to drop for the.
She was like, that's, wow, that's pretty big. She's like, you might want to narrow it down a little bit. And she was right. Of course she was right. But that was, I look back at that moment and that was one of those like brazen things that I would say, like, like how am I going to like change the entire world of child and adolescent psychiatry? But that's kind of how I took everything. It's like, I was never okay with the status quo. I was never okay with just the way things were done. I'm always looking at it and saying like, this can be done better. It's just built into my DNA. And so, one of the things I've learned, thanks to her and many other, folks who've helped me bring myself down to reality, is that dreaming is really good, but it's actually really easy to do that. The hard stuff is executing, right? And making things actually happen. So I tend to be a big thinker and a big dreamer and a visionary. That's the way I'm built. And that's good. And you have to have that, but you also have to be able to execute on the dream to make it happen. But I think that, I think first you have to have the dream. And I know, and I'll turn it back on you. I know, you and Adam have big dreams, and I appreciate that about you guys. And I resonate when I listened to, Adam's podcast. There was a lot of things I resonated. And one of the things I resonated with him is that he's also a dreamer. He thinks really big about stuff. And I like that about him. You guys mentioned things like you're in this to change, senior living for the better. You're not okay with status quo, and you guys want to do things differently, and you understand that in order to survive, you have to do it different. And I think that's the way I think about most things. So
I appreciate that perspective. I actually challenge our team almost daily. I think Caitlin actually quoted me as to saying to the team on our last all call last week to dream big. Yeah. But I think because of you, Brian, I'll add dream big and let's execute to that moving forward, because you're right. It is easy to dream. To execute takes you to the next level.
Yeah, and you think of people like Jeff Bezos and Steve Jobs, like they were big dreamers too, right? But they knew how to execute and make things happen, and they knew how to focus, right? Because problem with folks like us is we can be all over the place with all these dreams we got going on, right? But you have to be able to focus. And one of the things I appreciate about Alex, our CEO, is he is really good at doing that. He's really good at kind of narrowing in on, what is the one or two things that we need to do in order to move the needle. Because we couldn't do 10 things, right? But how many of them are going to be great, right? So it's focusing on the one or two things that you can make great, and that moves the needle, so that's what we've got to do. So, the bottom line is, you need people like Alex, and you need people like Brian, and you need people like Mike Wong, our founder, who's also a big dreamer, right? So we're the yin and yang. We make it all work.
Well, that's it. That's the secret sauce right there. The team can dream big, and together we can execute, right?
That's right.
So obviously in your career, we've talked about you being a clinician. You've taken massively bold moves from bedside, being a bedside clinician to the boardroom, led organizations like Maplewood, now at Inspiren. We talked a little bit about fear in your career and that imposter syndrome. Which one of those big moves scared you the most?
There it is again. There's that question. Scaring me the most. Yeah, I don't, like I was saying, I don't know that any one of my big career moves scared me the most. What actually scared me more was it was less about macro and more about micro. Like I wanted to make sure that I was doing the right thing by the people in front of me. So, I think I would often take positions that I was totally underqualified for, right? And I don't even know how these things happen, but I would end up in a position, with a big role and a big title that I simply was not capable of, but I would do it anyway, right? So that was the big bold move. And so I guess any one of the big career moves I've made, I can look back and say, there was a moment of sort of being a little bit terrified, like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. But then there's something else that clicks in me. And maybe this is from my childhood, where I have this ability to adapt and adjust very quickly, because I had to as a kid to survive. So I just have this thing where I'll turn it off in my brain, turn off the negative self-talk, and just turn on the, I'm going to do this. I'm going to figure it out no matter what it takes. And I think that's it. It's like that grit, or whatever you want to call it, that helps me push through the fear.
I appreciate that. I think, don't know who it was, and I believe it's somebody intentional in thought, but they told me, just say yes to an opportunity and then go figure it out.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way all the time. And I believe it's that imposter syndrome, but I look at everybody in our industry, in our organization, those who are really successful all suffer from that imposter syndrome. I don't know why it has to be that, but we're failing. We are always failing until we're not.
Yeah.
And we're succeeding.
Yeah. And if I'm honest with myself, like even something as simple as this podcast, like, I'm like, really? Like, Phil wants me to be on the podcast, and like, am I going to be able to do a good job? And then you just be like, well, if Phil believes I can do it, then I must be able to do it. And then you just do it. Right. And here we are, and it is what it is.
I can't believe how much like everything you're saying to me resonates with the professional and individual that I am as well.
Yeah.
And I encourage everybody that, like we going back to the, psychiatry days. Sure. I think we're all anxious at times. And I think we all, have the biggest fear of failure, but I think exposure therapy is the best. Just put yourself in the position and just do it. Go at it and succeed.
Yeah. And especially if you don't have a big ego about it, right?
Yeah.
It's like, that's where the vulnerability comes in, right? It's like, I've learned over my life, like, I'm okay being vulnerable because everyone's vulnerable, right? And that's one thing I learned in psychiatry. We're all hurting. We're all struggling with something, right? Everybody, every family has alcoholism. Every family has, not so great situations that they deal with. Every family struggles with mental health issues. So you don't have to be ashamed of all that stuff. You just, and bring it out, like bring it to light. I'm okay sitting here now in front of the world talking about my faults, my foibles, and the things that I've done wrong over my life, because everybody has, and it just makes us who we are. It's part of being human. So
I appreciate that you refer to the podcast as putting this out in front of the entire world.
Yes, this is
I can only dream that, that we get there at some point.
This is going to go viral, my friend.
Yeah. We're away from all of, the scaries. Let's talk about the failures that have launched you to even more success than any of your greatest success.
Yeah. I think failures for me resonates in relationships. Okay. So, I think that, it hasn't been a failure in a particular job or something like that. It's about personal relationships. And, again, going back to my upbringing, like I didn't have a lot of role models always. There were, and I certainly had them, but I didn't grow up in, the quintessential, family that we all think of when we think of like families. And so that impacted my ability to formulate, relationships, and that were always productive. Right. And I have learned, it's taken me, 50 plus years to learn how to be better at that. That's what I need to be working on, Phil. Can you help me out?
You know what? I would say that we've moved, past the partners and to the friends.
Yeah.
And I've appreciated both your professional and friendly guidance along the way.
Yeah.
Well,
again, that's one of the things. It's like, just help people, connect people, be there for them. It's like so simple and trite, but it's so true. I think when you grow up in tough situations, a lot of times you end up being very self-indulgent and self-focused. And that's one of the things you have to get away from that, because it's not about you. It's not about me, right? It's about giving to people and sharing life with them. That's what it's really all about. So I think the more we can learn to just wipe the ego away and be present with people and think about them and do things for them, the less you personally suffer because you're focused on other people.
Of course, you've succeeded in adolescent and geriatric care. You just summed up how to succeed in one quick response, Brian.
I have an interesting story too. When I was in training to be a psychotherapist, we had to, we were doing therapy. I was doing with kids and adolescents, and I had a patient who was a male adolescent, a boy, and he came from a very, very difficult family, lots of chaos, lots of conflict and fighting all the time and arguing and yelling and screaming in his house. It was constant. And he would come into our sessions and it was just he and I sitting in a room like you and I are here. And we would sit and he would, for the first month, he was very quiet. He didn't want to say much. And it was like pulling teeth to try to get information out of him. And I struggled with that because I felt like, am I doing something wrong? And I would talk to my supervisor and what am I doing wrong? And she would just chill out, Brian. It's okay. It's okay. And then about a month into it, he would literally sit there and within about 15 minutes or so, he would put his head back and he would start to fall asleep. And I would take this as a personal insult. What am I am I boring over here as a therapist? What's happening here? And again, my therapist, supervisor she grounded me and said, Brian, you have to understand that this person lives in a world of chaos day in and day out, right? Screaming, yelling, fighting. And he comes here and the fact that he's able to sit quietly with you and actually fall asleep means, what does it mean? He feels safe. He feels safe to do this with you. And I was like, really? Oh, I didn't think of it like that. And that was a big moment for me because it was true. What I was doing for him was giving him a safe space. And we didn't have to say anything. We could just sit in silence. And that's what he needed. He needed to sit with an adult who was protecting him in silence. And guess what? He was exhausted from all of the chaos in his life. So he would fall asleep, but he felt safe to do that. Would you ever fall asleep with somebody you didn't feel safe with in the same room? No. So wow, that was a big shocker for me to learn, that. And what it tells you is we all need a safe space, right? We all need to feel heard. We need to feel seen. We want to feel listened to and understood. And that's what, being a therapist trains you to do. And, getting back to the listening, I think good leaders are good at creating safe spaces where people can feel like they can say what they need to say and it's not going to come back at them. I have personally been in situations where, I was afraid at work to say certain things because I was afraid that there would be retribution, or I was afraid that there would be consequences. I was afraid I could get fired. And what do? You don't say anything. And then what happens? And that's the culture of fear, right? So I think for us, creating a balance where, you just can't say anything all the time, but, creating a space where people feel like they're safe enough to say what's on their mind and not fear retribution or consequences to that.
It's incredible insight. Obviously, I could ponder that the answer to the next question will be listening and something quite like we just spoke about. But obviously, you've led teams, mixed clinicians, operators, data scientists, engineers. How do you get all of those different disciplines rowing in the same direction for the health of our great industry?
Yeah, it's a good question. One of my roles at Inspiren is to be that connector, is to be the interpreter.
Uh-huh.
So what I do, because I was a customer of Inspiren's, I was an operator. I understand the industry really intimately. I was in the trenches like you are every day. And so what I do is I work across all of our teams internally at Inspiren to shine a light about the industry, to educate people about our stakeholders, to help them understand families and residents and staff. We have lots of stakeholders, right, in this industry. we have lots of customers. Like, in our case, the operator may be our customer, but it's not the only stakeholder. We have stakeholders from investors all the way through to frontline staff and families and loved ones. So what I help the engineers and the machine learning folks and the product designers do is understand those people deeply and intimately so that the products that we build and the services we deliver are specifically designed for those stakeholders, right? So that's one way that I help get us all rowing in the right direction. And it's something that fills me with a lot of joy when a machine learning engineer hits me up on Slack and says, Brian, do you have 5 minutes? I just want to pick your brain, right? That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Or when a product designer pulls me into a product design meeting because they want to get my perspective. So that's a really good feeling that I can help um, people who are way smarter than me, like figure out how to build the next product and then the next product. That's where we can be visionary. I can say, I can see the products of the future, and then I can go back to the engineers and say, this is what we need. And then they, can go do what they do really well and build it.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
In your world, far before most, you are a visionary to the industry, to Adam, to I. You've lived at the intersection of technology and care. What made you believe that this wasn't just a tech trend and a human transformation and buy into moving to the product side?
Yeah, I think that I have this little framework that I've worked on called have, use, do. Right. So having technology is great. You own it. Big deal. Right. We've got technology sitting in front of us right now. Um, we're using it. So there's having technology, you own it, great. But it's really there's no value creation. It's not it's creating latent value if anything. All right. And then you move to the next phase, which hopefully you get to, which is using technology. Right. So you want people to be using it. The problem with if you're just stuck there in the use phase, there's a lot of friction, right? There's a lot of disruption in your day and your workflow. But it's there and you're using it. Maybe it's because you have to use it. Maybe it's because Phil told you we invested in this technology and you're going to use it. Right. So that's not where you want to be either. At least they're using it. They might be getting a little bit of value, but they're not getting the unleashed value out of it. You want to get to the do phase. So you get to the phase where you're doing technology. And that's when the technology disappears into the background and you don't even realize it's there anymore, right? You're just doing your job better. That's it. You don't have this thing on the wall, or you don't have the thing on the app on your phone. You're just doing your job better. You're more efficient. You're more effective, right? You're able to spend more time with the people you're caring for. That's another thing you asked about, tech versus human. Like everything we build should be to empower the humans to be more human, right? AI is really, really good at distilling down massive amounts of data. Humans aren't that good at that. But what humans are really good at is empathy and compassion, right? And machines aren't that good at that. So let's let the machines do what they're really good at, and let's have the humans do what they're good at. That's what it's all about. So if we can build systems, technology, machines that help humans do the things they're super good at, then we've achieved the objective.
I love that. Innovation born from empathy, not ego. And it sounds like your leadership style reflects that same belief: culture first, technology second.
Yeah.
What's a leadership lesson that you've had to learn the hard way?
It would be it's be careful what you say, but be more careful how you say it. Okay, so that's something that I've learned. I have over the course of my career, I can be blunt, I can be harsh, right? Because my thing is, I just like to talk about reality. Okay, even though I'm a trained psychotherapist and I'm all about empathy and compassion, I can be pretty hardcore when it comes to getting stuff done, and I have to be careful about the way that my message resonates with the person I'm talking to, especially if I'm in a position of authority, right? So I have to be cognizant of how my words and the affect that I present my words with impacts the person that I'm speaking with. That's something that I've learned a lot because talk about making mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes on that front. So I have softened my tone and I've softened my approach a lot over the years. And I still, to this day, I watch and learn. So I watch and learn people who are really good at delivering a message to somebody who might report to them. And I take it in and I listen, I learn, and I use that the next time that I have to be in that position. So yeah, that's a big one for me. That's a biggie.
Yeah. Sounds like, vulnerability is a strong suit, or you've learned that through leadership. How do you practice vulnerability, especially today when you're, leading an organization and partnering with individuals where precision and expertise are so important?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually a really sappy person. I'm the person who like cries at really sappy commercials, or I'll be on, I'll be on the couch watching like a Netflix, and I'm over there like tears are coming down my face, and like I'm okay with that. Like
Yeah.
that's one of the things I laugh at. Like I'm all right with it. Like I can tear up, and it's all fine. And that's being vulnerable. So a lot of times I like to drive lessons through stories, and so I'll tell stories, and stories hit me in the heart. So lots of times I'll tell stories, and I get all emotional and choked up about it, because we're talking about humans here, and we're talking about the human condition and people's real life experience. So when I bring those stories up, I get vulnerable. You could see I get shake, my voice shakes, and you know, um, my eyes get glassy, and that's just okay with me. Yeah.
I'm the same way. I'm a crier. As you know, I'm headed out in 2 weeks with your coworker Isaac to go duck hunting. And the biggest,
Oh,
the
oh,
one thing I fear the most about this is when I actually execute on, shooting
when
a
you
duck.
execute a duck,
Will I show my emotion in front of these
don't do it,
these
Phil.
these hunters?
Uh,
I
oh
have to
man.
prepare myself for that.
Yeah. I've said to Isaac, if I ever end up on a hunting trip with him, I'll just sit back and I'll let them do no judgment, but I'm
Yeah.
not killing a duck or a deer. And again, like more power to him. It's great, but I'll eat it. Later when we go back to the house, I'll have a venison burger, but I can't do it.
We'll see what happens. I'm excited about it. So, um, moving forward to the future, 20 years from now, no titles, no org chart. Who's the version of yourself that you hope to be?
Teacher. Yeah. I want to be a teacher, an advisor. I want to help young people, find their way in the world and maybe skip over some of the mistakes that I've made, shed the wisdom, right? Yeah, that's what I envision doing. I actually envision also being a student. I've always had this drive to go back to school. Like I want to go get a PhD in something just because I love to learn, right? I'm very curious. I'm always asking why. I'm never satisfied with, what is. I want to learn about what's next. And being a teacher and giving back, and then being a student and learning and having people teach me what they know. I think I'll also be in a music studio somewhere jamming out some tunes, because I love music and I love to play, and I love to sing and all that stuff. So
Really? What instrument do you play?
I do play guitar, but I'm not that great at it.
Okay.
Only because I haven't put the time. Guitar, any instrument,
Okay.
you got to put in the time. And I think if I put in the time, I'd be much better. And I'm a singer. I'm a singer in a rock band. So that's another thing
Really?
I do on the side. You didn't know that?
I
It's a
didn't know
little thing he doesn't know about me.
that.
Yeah.
I love that. I
Yeah.
mean, is it out there in the World Wide Web? Could we go listen
I'm
in?
not giving you any
Drop
information
a
about
plug
this.
for the listeners out there, Brian.
It's not that kind of band, man. No, we're just a bunch of 50-year-old guys who love music, and it's six of us. We get together and we jam. We have a blast. We make people dance and have a lot of fun, and it's just fun for us. We don't practice. Our practice is being on stage. We play like a couple times a month out at different places, and we just have a great time. So music's really important to me. It always has been, and I think that I'll do music, till the day I die, hopefully.
We're staying in that 20 years from now
Yeah.
mindset. When you look back on your career 20 years from now, from that vantage point, what do you hope your biggest accomplishment is?
Oh, it's that I've, in my own little small way, have made the world a better place for vulnerable populations, right? So whether it's kids or older adults, When I was a clinician, I would sit one-on-one with patients and I would help them on their journey. I would walk with them on their journey. And that was great. And I loved it. And it helped shape the person I am today. But today, what I'm doing is the same exact thing, but just at scale. So I'm helping vulnerable populations in the thousands now, right? So with the technology we build, we can impact thousands of people's lives every day. We can help prevent falls for the first time. That's really exciting for me because falls are an absolutely devastating thing for older adults. Once you hit 75 years old, your likelihood of falling and hurting yourself goes way up. And the older you get, it gets even more risky. And if you fall, you break a femur or a hip, you're in rough shape, at that point. And the fact that we can build technology today that can almost eradicate falls in the future, like we're headed in that direction. We're not there yet, but we will see a day in the relatively near future when an older adult falling will be kind of something that rarely happens. And right today, there's 3 million emergency department visits from older adults who fall. 1/3 of those end up in hospitalization. I would love to see a day when it's 300, right? That would be incredible. And I think we can do it. I think with the technology we're building today, we can actually get to a place where falls essentially become a thing of the past.
Well, I know that we're on that journey together.
Yeah.
I can't wait to share all of the successes with the world and our listeners as we move to that part. Brian, this was incredible. I had no expectations in inviting you on the pod. I knew that I would meet the clinician.
Mm-hmm.
I know the operator. I know the tech leader. And now I also got to meet the rock star. Brian Geyser, thank you so much for spending this time.
I'm laughing at that because that is funny.
Yeah. But this was an incredible time spent with you. Thank you so much. And I can't wait for our listeners to hear this one.
Thanks, Phil.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man.
This has been the Meritage Project, a podcast by Solera Senior Living. These stories don't end here. They live on in our communities every day. Follow and subscribe for a new episode the first Monday of each month as we continue blending voices and creating legacy.